I want to expand on yesterday's video. I've listened to all my feedback and I've responded to some messages, but I would like to kind of take this video to respond to a lot of the feedback I've got. And a lot of people haven't seemed to make the connection of what I'm trying to say in yesterday's video, so I would just like to reiterate and kind of maybe share things in a different light that might maybe make this connection for what we are. I made this meme yesterday. You can find it on my Facebook page. And I'm going to read that for you. I know it's backwards, but if you want to check this meme out, it's on my Facebook page. But what it says is, "This is the universe becoming aware of itself," is the title. "We are a concept creating a concept through the conscious ego and subconscious role of God. One we identify as self, the other is just that, something other than self, but both concepts are the dual mind appearing separate. The I am is non-dual." And there's a few people that didn't quite understand this, and that's alright, but I just want to kind of take the time to explain this a little more and give my interpretation on this meme. Because what this is this is the famous picture of the creation of Adam. And so that's what I want to talk about, is what this is showing you is God coming from the human brain and touching Adam, the human, the being. And what they're doing when they touch points with their finger, each finger is meeting at a singular point, and it's at that singular point where the two touch to become one, to realize themselves as one. And that's what my video was about yesterday, the fact that we are a non-dual mind. Beyond the physical, beyond what we will ever appear as, we are a non-dual mind, meaning what we truly are, and this is something that's very well known in Eastern philosophy, in Hindu and Buddhist philosophy, this is something very well known, but what we are truly, beyond all spoken word, beyond the senses, beyond what we can express, what we are cannot be expressed through the senses. And that's just it. We want to know what we are beyond the senses, but need to use the senses to express what we are. And that's just it. As long as we're using the senses to express what we are, it is simply an expression of that. It is never what it actually is, because what actually is cannot be expressed through senses. It is so much more than that. And this is why people who have done hallucinogens and psychedelics will tell you, this video doesn't do my experience justice, this video doesn't do my experience justice, this book, this person doesn't do my experience justice, because it is the most profound, unexplainable, and powerful moment one can ever describe or try to even describe to you, because it cannot be explained to you. It has to be shown to you. You have to walk through it yourself to understand even a fraction of someone who has been into psychedelics or hallucinogens. But the fact of the matter is what we are in the physical, what we appear as, are split concepts. So what we are in the physical is a concept birthing a concept, but these concepts are splitting themselves, and that's what we never stop to take the time to realize. We are a dual being, and this is just it. I said in the video yesterday, we need to birth out as what we are not. So, by me knowing this is what I am not, because the body dies, so what I am not fears death, because the body dies, so I know this is not what I am. So, something in me fears death, because I know this is what I am not. So, it is the part of me that knows this is not what I am, that wishes to see beyond, that wishes to connect to what I actually am. That way this fear of death can be alleviated, and I can realize myself. But this is just it. Even as even us birthing into what we are not creates the polar opposites of what we are. So by you creating a concept of what you are not, you birth the opposite concept of what you feel you are. And vice versa. What you feel you are, you birth the concept that you feel you are not. So and vice versa. It does not matter. But either way, you are two concepts appearing separate, splitting itself. You are the I am splitting itself. So, while one is... Here, let me change markers. This is way too late. So in one, this is what I meant by yesterday. We are a dual being. We have to birth out as what we are not, which would be this side, to also birth the concept of the opposing side of that coin, of what we feel we are. So by me appearing in a position of time, and time is just order, realize that. We cannot know chaos without order. So by having time, we're bringing order to the chaos, to our never-ending infinite nature. So again, by me appearing in time, I instantaneously birth the concept. And when I say birth, I don't mean a literal birthing. What I mean is by you creating the concept of self. What is the self? It is all you've ever known. It is what you have used to identify yourself with. It is what you have used to describe the awareness that's inside of your vessel. So all you've ever known since your conception was the self. That's all you've ever been able to know. And through the senses, you have been able to take in yourself. You have been able to establish yourself. You have been able to establish an identity of what and who the self is. But remember, by you birthing or appearing as one side of the coin, you instantaneously, without even trying to or without even meaning to, because remember, you are a dual being. You are both the light and the dark principle. You are the yin and the yang. So without even you trying to, by you identifying with self, you have instantaneously, without even meaning to, birthed the concept of other. And this is the great conspiracy that most of us are aware of. We know something greater than ourselves, but we just can't bring it to the surface. We just can't bring it to the light. We just cannot say what it is, but we know something beyond ourselves, something greater than, something we can't explain. And that's just it. There is a great conspiracy between, and this is something Alan Watts has said too, there is a great conspiracy between what you call self and other. And if the self finds that out, well, then the whole game changes, because then you will find out that I'm not just a below. I'm not just a human. I'm not just the lower consciousness. Because remember, we split ourselves with a lower half and a higher half. So by me convincing myself, and remember, it's impossible for you not to be the self. And even if, this is what I said, even if you take the dual principles and reverse them, switch them around. Let's say instead of what you called self, let's say we called this other. Let's say I called myself other, and I call you self. Either way, it does not matter, because you can switch the dual principles forward or backward, backward or forward, life or death, death or life. It does not matter. You wouldn't know the difference. You can convince yourself. You would know the difference. But beyond, when you really think about it, honestly with an open mind, you will realize you would not know the difference if time or phenomenon was happening in a forward motion or a backward motion. If I was talking forward or in rewind, you wouldn't know the difference. You would just understand what I'm saying. You can convince yourself I'm talking forward and not backward, but that's just it. You're convincing yourself. You're either on this side or that side, because you have to appear as one or the other. But what we don't realize is by appearing as one side, we instantaneously create the other, because we are other. And that is the great conspiracy between self and other, is there is no other, and there is no self, truly. Beyond the self and beyond other, they converge into a non-dual. So I want everybody to realize this here. Beyond the physical, beyond what we are a non-dual energy. And that's the best thing that I can use to describe it. And I'm even going to tell you, and remember how I said, everything in this life is a contradiction. Every single thing, our entire life is a contradiction in itself, because while all is one, it never appears as one. It has to appear as two to know itself. To know self, I have to have other. So all is one, but it has to appear as two. Total contradiction in itself. While it's you, it's not the you which you appear as and see. Total contradiction. So again, we are a non-dual energy, and I will tell you, even me saying this, a non-dual energy, is not at all what it is. But again, we have to formulate some way of language, of understanding, or try to narrow the gap between what we actually are and what we aren't, which cannot be expressed through the senses. But we want to narrow that gap as much as we can to get as close to that answer that we feel we can. So it's easy to just say, well, it cannot be expressed, it cannot be spoken, it cannot be any spoken word. And if we all just said that, well, then our work would be done here, and we would just say, okay, it can't be expressed, we're done here, walk away. But no, the fun is in trying to express and trying to know and trying to uncover yourself. And again, a contradiction, because what you are can't be expressed, yet you try and express it. Absolute contradiction in itself, you see. But anyway, we are a non-dual energy beyond the physical. And when I say non-dual, I mean one. The reason I say non-dual is because when we appear in the physical, we have the principle of the yin and the yang, which is the self and the other. And that creates the dual principle. So the self and the other, which is you and me, you and me, you and me, we can, and that also represents inside and outside. The inside body, the outside world, that represents all things in duality. Inside, outside, you and me, left, right, above, below. So, what the self and the other exist in is the dual mind. The dual mind. And that's why I say the I am has to split itself to take in itself. And that's why I say we're a concept birthing a concept. We're a concept splitting itself through another concept. And what we never stop to realize is that the awareness, the voice, the awareness that is telling the story of these concepts is the very awareness that has split you and separated you from your heaven, from your God, from whatever sovereignty it is you feel you've been separated from. You have done that to yourself, but realize the purpose behind it. It's not a dirty trick, it's not a dirty game, it's not some sick illusion that you're existing in. You're not stuck here. Realize you are the creator, you are the one in power the whole time. It is you. And it is hard to admit to yourself. But what we are in the physical will always be the dual principle of night and day, male, female. Again, I have to appear as a positive or a negative, as a male or a female. I have to appear as one side of the coin to convince myself I am just this and the other half is not me. And that's the greatest trick. By me being masculine, a male, I ignore the female principle. I ignore the feminine traits. I ignore the feminine qualities and principles all around. And you never realize that half of your identity is missing when you do this. Because again, you are a dual being in the physical. And when you do not acknowledge your dual principle in all things, half of you is missing. It takes putting the left hemisphere of the brain with the right hemisphere of the brain and bringing them together into a single unity. But when you do this, when you take the dual mind and make it non-dual, you have now combined the self with other. And what do you get when you combine self with other, inside to outside, the body and the earth? What do you get when you combine them together? The answer is, it cannot be known. And if it is known, it is not what it is. If you are conscious and able to establish an identity, are able to say, I am, even I am, then it still is not what it is, because it is not an expression through the senses. And while that upsets some people, realize the power behind that. You are so much more than what your senses can try and even explain to you, can even try to understand. And that's why we've never forgotten anything. Our true nature is not knowing. You don't know that self. You can't know that self. And that's why some people think so hard to try and connect to that and beat their brains to death. And if they just think hard enough, they'll remember. But that's what they do not realize, is you have not forgotten anything. You are not supposed to remember what you are, because again, what you are is never expressed, never known. We can try and express it, which is what I'm doing, trying to narrow that gap between human and God, mortal and immortal, but what we are cannot be expressed. So, the only reason I know of immortality. I know of immortality not because of me. I'm not an immortal being. I've never witnessed anything, anyone, any place be never-ending, nor have you. We never will. We've never witnessed anything never-ending. So where did the concept of never-ending come from? Where did the concept of infinity come from? Something which can never end. Something that never began. Just always is. Where does this concept come from? I'll tell you where it comes from, because that's all it is a concept. And this concept is birthed through the concept which you appeared as, the mortal. You had to appear as a mortal in time. So through being a mortal in time, you've birthed the never-ending immortality, or the immortal principle. And that's why I say you are a dual mind. Two sides to your brain. You're split in the middle without even trying to be. It's written inside of all of us. And that's why I say we are not one side or the other. We are the line and the point in the middle of left and right that separates left from right, inside from outside, male from female, night from day. We are the very point and line in the center that divides all things from itself, because we are the it. And without ourselves, we could not know ourselves. That is the absolute contradiction yet again. Welcome to the paradox. Without your higher self, you could not know your lower self, and vice versa. Without your lower self, you could not know your higher self. The two go hand in hand. If you remove the lower self, if you remove the human, the God ceases to exist. And again, I'm not saying God doesn't exist. Your concept of God will cease to exist if your concept of the ego, of the conscious ego, ceases to exist. And this is going to bring me to my next point of conscious and subconscious, because that plays a role in the dual and non-dual function here as well. So, okay, you have a dual mind and you have a non-dual. The dual mind is what we appear as, is all we've ever known, because we have two sides to our brain. We are split. So what that does is that instantaneously splits you between, well, between everything, really, but it splits you between this here. And to me, this is the most revealing piece of duality to you, right here. This is the most revealing element to your dual being. by me birthing out as the self, which is what I identify as me, I birth out the idea of my conscious. I'm conscious, so consciousness. I birth out consciousness. What is the opposite of consciousness? Because consciousness just means that I am aware, I can analyze, I am here, I can remember, I am formulating thought, I am present in the moment, I am consciously choosing and remembering and analyzing, and am here, consciously. So what is the opposite of consciousness? And I'll give you a hint. It's the opposite of self. By you being the self, you birth other. By you being the consciousness, you birth the subconscious, which again has to appear as something other than yourself. So again, this is the most revealing element to your dual being. Why do we as human beings not identify with God itself? Why? And I'll tell you why. Because we are the self. And God is the subconscious, which appears as the other. Other means just that. It is something outside the self, beyond the self, outside, external, foreign to the self. So by God being the subconscious, you do not identify with it because it is not a part of your consciousness. But that's just it. Your awareness, which is that cannot be explained or described, has split itself into consciousness, subconsciousness, self and other, ego and God. These two concepts have been dancing with each other since the beginning of any record, because they have to. You are a dual being, and to know yourself, you have to have something other than yourself. It has to appear as something foreign to the self, other than, beyond, outside the self. So again, why do we as man, as humans, not identify with God? Not only do we think we're not worthy, but again, I'm only conscious of my thoughts, of my actions, of what I do, what I control in my reality around me. So the things beyond my control, what rotates the stars, what moves the sun, what crescents the moon, what does all these things, is not my conscious choice nor decision. That would belong to the subconscious, which again is not self, is other, outside me. So I would not identify with the subconscious motion of the stars moving, the sun turning, the moon phasing. I would never identify with these things because, again, I only appear as one side of the coin, consciousness. So why would I ever identify with the subconscious? Of course it's not me. It couldn't be me. But that's where you have to realize, who is me? What is the me? Well, who am I? Because deep down you already know you are appearing as what you are not. And that's why most of us are afraid of death, because we know the body dies. And we also know, it's been said a million times, we're a spirit, we're a soul, we never end, we never die. So you deep down know you're appearing as what you are not. So if this is what I am not, peel back the rest of the layers to your illusion. Our persistent illusion is what keeps us playing these games with ourselves. And this is the thing. This is the greatest part about it. There is nothing out there in that universe. There is nothing outside yourself. You here and now listening to me. There's nothing outside of you that's waiting to reveal itself to you but you. That's the best part, is you are working and moving at your own pace. You're not involved in the universal shift. You're not involved in the universal revolution. These things don't exist. Sorry to tell you. You are the shift in consciousness. It takes place here. You are the revolution. It's all within you. And that's why I posted the status yesterday that there might be some place, out there in the world where corruption rules and everyone's disconnected and evil is just running the world and all this. But as I said, the purpose in seeking spirituality and seeking any enlightenment is to find your own liberation. Your own liberation from anything which you've been suffering from, existing in, existing as. It's supposed to wash away what you are not, so that you can reveal to yourself what you are and become that. And that's what suffering and depression and pain leads us to, is the fact that we need change. We want change. And if it weren't for the discomforting feeling, we would never have sought out a change. It is that pain and that discomfort which is that universe speaking to you. But again, there's nothing outside of you revealing itself to you. It is you. So signs from the universe are just that. They're signs from you. There's nothing in the universe waiting to reveal itself to you. And that's why I've said, we, as this projection of this consciousness, we control where the self exists. Our earthly experience here can change in a second. Because Earth is not any physical place. Earth is not anywhere at all. And this is something I sound absolutely crazy to some people about, but it's true. We're all sharing the same space, creating a different reality, a different truth, a different God, a different experience. That cannot be disputed. This is why there are so many facts and theories and truths and alternatives and conspiracies and blah, 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 blah. There is not one truth happening here. There is not one story being told here. This is how the universe takes in itself, through many. One appearing through many. And that's what we don't realize, is we're all one consciousness. But many people simply don't realize what that means. How can I be the birth name, the body, and be one with God and all things at the same time? And that's just it. Our ego, which is the birth name, will never let us admit to ourselves that we are not the birth name. Even though deep down we know this is what we are not. That's why what we think we are fears death. Because we know the body, the mere image, dies, rots, decays, and goes nowhere. We don't want to go nowhere. We want to find our way back into that true nature of what we are, so we don't ever have to experience death. But that's the spoiler alert here. When you die before your physical death, you realize, well, there is no death at all. We're all characters, if you will, inside of God's mind, as people have said. But remember, the character and God are both concepts being created from the awareness itself. Awareness is what you are. That awareness is your true blissful state. That awareness is what people try attaining or reaching in meditation, deep meditation. And I've told people, it's not about silencing the mind, because even by silencing the mind and trying to silence the mind, you're trying to do something. And meditation is not trying to do anything at all. Even if you're trying to sit still and do nothing, you're trying to do something. So some people think they have to focus their minds hard enough and close their eyes hard enough, tight enough, and silence the mind. And they try hard and hard and hard and hard to not do anything at all, not realizing they're taking away from that awareness. It's not to try and do anything at all. It's to be the witness to anything that you feel, think, or is happening. You become a witness, and how you become that witness is by going into that awareness. You don't have to focus on silencing the mind. Become the witness to all thought, all emotion, all feeling. It doesn't matter if you're feeling panicked and ready to crap your pants, and you're depressed or scared or frightened or shaken to your core. That's the best part about meditation. If you feel good, you're doing it right. If you feel bad, you're still doing it right. It's about the awareness. The awareness is what is witnessing good feeling, bad feeling, happy, sad. But the awareness can never be affected by good or bad. The witness just is. But you take on the role of the ego, which is, as Robert Adams says, the I thought. It's what you identify as. So you do not suffer. It is the I thought, the ego, that suffers. What you think you are is suffering. But the awareness that is observing or feeling these things does not feel them. It is what you think you are that is choosing to feel them in this way. And so that's why I say it's not about good feeling or bad feeling. So it's the same thing. Am I the subconscious or the conscious? It's not about either one. It's not about am I conscious or subconscious? Am I physical or non-physical? Am I alive or am I dead? No. It's not about the dual concept in meditation or in trying to reach that awareness, that source which cannot be spoken. No spoken word. Because again, it is non-dual. That awareness that we try and search for, that we call God, it's non-dual, which means it cannot be expressed through any spoken word, ever. There's no human sense that can express non-duality. And as I've said, yes, it is a contradiction, because even me telling you non-duality is what it is, it still is not what it is. There's your paradox. There is your paradox. Absolute paradox. So it's not to be confused. Am I this or am I that? Am I that or am I this? Am I here or am I there? No, 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 no. You're not either one. You can convince yourself you're this or that, but the truth is you are the center point right here that you see, in between the self and other. And it's this point which has created you as the self, which creates the opposite, the mirror to the self. And the mirror to the self is other. So by you being the self, you birth consciousness. And by consciousness, you birth the subconscious. One is what you are physically doing and choosing to do. The other is what you are not choosing to do, is what you have no idea is happening. The conscious and subconscious dual principle is the sole reason I feel why we do not realize we are God. Again, if we pose the fact that God is something other than myself, it's not inside of me, then that's just how you're fooling yourself. By you being the self and being on this side of the coin, you're putting God on that side of the coin as something other, because the opposite to self is other. So if I am merely human, if I am merely the below, well then other has to be the above, the higher principle. So I am the below to the above, but that is just it. That is the trick. If you just call yourself the below, half of your identity is missing, and you will never know your place here. You will think your answers are out there in the stars, never realizing those stars are right here. It's an extension, it's farther out, it's a projection from the point right here, but that's just it. Those stars are a projection from here. I don't need to go out there for my answer, it's right here. And that's where NASA and all these people are fooling themselves. You can spend your whole lives going deep out into space and exploring and doing these things, but everything you are going to experience there is already here. Everything there is the projection of here. And when you have half of your identity missing, you begin searching for things that don't even exist. So half of the things that the human being is looking for is not even there, because we are not human, and we never have been. But by assuming this role, this mask, we have created a boundary of thinking, a limit for ourselves. And that's why it is so absurd to go out into an open crowd today and just say, we're not human. You would get looked at so strangely, because society and cultures are just that. They are illusions that we as ourselves exist in. Remember, because it's all you. So these people who exist in illusion are just extensions of you, living in the same illusion you once did. They're forgetting that it's all them. They're forgetting it's the disappearance of I am. That's personally what I think our purpose here is. It's not to have to do anything. It's not to have to be anything. It is to simply forget that we are everything. Again, the only reason I know my family and I can love my family because they do not appear as myself. They appear as other than myself. So by me having others, I can love, I can experience. But the purpose of this is to forget that we are all just one thing. When the self and other, the conscious and subconscious, when the dual mind dissolves into the non-dual energy, what you have left is nothing. Everything but nothing. And that's just it. That's a part of the duality. Everything and nothing. What do you get when everything and nothing dissolves into non-duality? Because everything and nothing is dual, too. So what do you get when everything becomes nothing and nothing becomes everything? It becomes non-dual, something which cannot be expressed. It's an expression which cannot be expressed. It's irrational. It's infinite. It just is. Therefore, all we can say to express it is non-dual. Which means it is one thing. Everything is one. So our purpose here, in my opinion, is to forget that we are all one. To get lost. You're supposed to get lost here. And that's just it. This is what I'm trying to tell people. You're not a slave here. You're not a foreigner here. You're not a victim here. You can convince yourself, absolutely, you're a victim, you're a slave, you're a whatever. You can convince yourself you have to escape the matrix or whatever mission you want to give yourself. But this is just what you're doing. You are the one God, the one mind, playing these games with itself, these games of prolonging itself, these games of having to avoid itself. So by you staying stuck in these illusory stages of awakening, by you staying stuck in the rabbit hole, by you staying stuck in seeking and studying and researching, you're preventing that inevitability of yourself. That little vortex that spirals down into the little hole, the vortex, the toilet bowl, that's you. You're spiraling down, but you're avoiding the point. You're going around it and around it and around it, and you're just saying, nope, I'm never going to hit that. I'm avoiding it. That's what we're doing, unawareingly. When we're studying government conspiracies and we're persisting in our own illusions, we're only prolonging ourselves. We're avoiding that little point which we all spiral down into. Eventually you have to touch it, because the it is you. Eventually you will have to run into yourself and realize yourself in all things. And this is why I tell people, nothing outside of you is a threat to you. How you perceive what is outside of you is what is. And again, people will exaggerate what I just said, but I don't mean someone with a gun to your head, obviously. But what I mean by this is foreign entities, an alien, an artificial being. If they come to you tomorrow, how you see it is how you see yourself. All that extension from your consciousness is, yes, it looks different. Yes, it absolutely convinces you it's different. But remember, all is one. What does that mean? And again, that is the hardest thing to admit to the self. And that is the great conspiracy between self and other, is that I am the consciousness and subconsciousness. Now, when you review what subconscious means, that means action that is not being done by me. So if I can convince myself I am only the action that I choose, and I am not the action that is not being done by me, I can convince myself that something other than me in this universe is making things happen, is doing these things while I sleep, and while I'm not aware of things, while I zone out. Something other than myself takes over. But that is just it. That is the great conspiracy between self and other, is you are what turns the stars, what rotates the sun, what phases the moon, what births all beings from this dimension into the next. And this is why I shared that quote from Logan 22, the Gospel of Thomas. The book was taken out of the Bible, but it talks about when you make human eyes, two, serve as God's eye, one, and you make the male to where it's no longer merely masculine, and you make the female to where it's no longer merely feminine, and you join them together into a single unity, you shall attain your sovereignty and have found your way into the kingdom of heaven. That's what it's telling you. And that's what I'm trying to share here, is it does not matter if the male is the female, if the female is the male, if the positive is the negative is the positive, if the hell is the heaven, heaven is the hell, light is the dark, dark is the light. If the black man was white, if the white man was black, it does not matter. One does not come before the other. To know one, you have to know the other. This cannot be debated, cannot be disputed. Only us as humans stuck in ego will kill another over what side came first. But what we don't realize, again, is half your identity is missing. If I don't acknowledge the darkness inside of me, half of my identity is missing. If I don't acknowledge the light inside of me, half of my identity is missing. It's not all love and light. You are the dark principle too, and you can't forget that. It's not all love and light. By saying love and light, you're totally ignoring your other half, your other identity. To know the light, you have to know the dark. And that is the great conspiracy between self and other. So it does not matter if your name is Lisa, if your name is Connor, if your name is freaking Tyler, if your name is Shirley. It doesn't matter what side of the coin you are birthing out as. It does not matter if you are birthing as a male, if you're birthing as a female. If you do not acknowledge your other half within you, half of your identity will forever be missing. And so I'll reiterate what I mean with that, using myself as an example. So me as Tyler, yes, I am a male, but when I say you don't make the male masculine and the female feminine, what I mean by that is acknowledge yourself as the dual principles on each side of everything. So when I say male-female, I'm talking about the sun and the moon. When I say male-female, I'm talking about the above and the below. When I say male-female, I'm talking about the ego and God. These two dual concepts which have been split and have been dancing with each other since the beginning of record. One evokes the other as the other is in relation to the other. They're one and the same. And here's something I said I wanted to do the other day. Oh, crap. Can't find my, Oh, wow. Just had my eraser. All right. So even if we were to switch the roles around, let's just say here, because some people have said, if everything was one thing, if you were God, what would you do, right? So let's just switch the role around, because I've been doing it solely as one way here. I've been posing the idea of, let's say we're birthing into a human to have the God experience on this side. Well, no. Let's flip the coin just a little so I can maybe make a connection a little different here for some people. Maybe this will spark a plug here or something. Let's just say, instead of identifying with the word human, let's just say, every child that births out tomorrow, instead of being convinced they are a human being, they're instead identifying with the word God. Realize it would make no difference, because remember, you can take one side of the coin and flip it to the other side, forward or backward. You would not know the difference. It would not make a difference, because again, this is not what you are and this is not what you are. But to know this, you have to appear as this, or to know this, you have to appear as this, one or the other. So, if babies were born tomorrow convinced of themselves as what they call God, what would happen is it would be no different than the babies birthing out today, thinking they are a human. It would be no different, because all this is a label or a mask, a boundary, which we as the self exist in. Sorry, that was sloppy as hell. So, no matter what we birth out as, we will always create an identity, a word, a title, a mask, a boundary of what we are. So, let's get this straight. What the self is birthing is a concept of what it is. So, this is why I say, it does not matter if the self convinces itself it is a human or it is the word God. Either way, the self would still know nothing. It would feel brand new. It would feel as if it is establishing itself. So, even if it identified with the word God. It would not hold God in a high regard. It would think of the word God as we think of the word human. Just that. So God would be associated with the below. And let's just say the word human was actually the all supreme God, the supreme intelligence. So kids would be birthed tomorrow as God, trying to make their way over to the human side. And this is what I'm trying to flip here. I'm trying to make people aware that either way you flip it does not matter, because you are both concepts. And it is the awareness, which is this central point here. The central point, it is the awareness that births this concept and this concept. One is self and one is other. And again, you could call yourself the other and you could call the other self. It would not make a difference. Either way, you are aware that this is me or that is me. One or the other is you. And if one is you, then the other is what? Just that. Other than you. Outside you. Foreign. So even if they began as God, they would be the below to the above, which would be human. So it would be God still trying to have a human experience. But again, we do it backwards. We put God over here and we put the human over here, right? So we're instead a human trying to have a God experience. But that's just it. You need to flip it backwards and realize there is no difference. We could be God trying to have a human experience, but that's just it. You're not human and you're not God. These are both concepts. So again, I want people to understand what I say here. I'm not saying there is no God. God is the non-dual energy which cannot be expressed or spoken. God is the actual subject and seer. God evokes the question and the answer, you see? That goes with the duality. One is the question and the other is the answer. And so, one you appear as self, and one you don't appear as other. But if the two are one, what does that tell you? You are the question which evokes the answer. So by you having the question, you birth the answer. That's what you don't realize. There is knowing and asking. When you have a question, when you don't know something, but you have a question formulated, there's knowing in that question. You know, but by asking the question, you're simply reminding yourself or remembering. You've known all along. It is through the question that you remember. I'm much happier with this video. I think I've explained this video a little better than yesterday's video, because I listened to a lot of the feedback I got on my video yesterday, and anything that was unclear or I don't think I expressed in depth enough, I think I've covered this video to where most people who are here for, whatever it is you're here for, should make the connection, should get it, should understand. Because if you're here for a reason. And this is my ultimate message. This is what I want people to realize. I don't want people to be stuck on the envelopes, on the decorated envelopes, the teachers. Don't be stuck on the teachers. Don't be stuck on the envelopes. Open the packages that the teachers are telling you, the packages, and receive the message. So what I mean is, you don't need to be stuck on a teacher. You don't need to be reliant on a guru. You don't need anybody. That's the very point here. You are your own teacher. You are your own guru. All we do as philosophers or speakers is remind the self or others what you already know. That's all this is a reminder. But I'm going to post this on my YouTube channel, Red Pill Rabbit Hole. If you have not subscribed, you can subscribe on my YouTube channel, Red Pill Rabbit Hole. This will be on my Facebook page, Order of the Black Wheel Matrix, and Tyler Ugaldi, my main Facebook page. If anyone has any ideas, topics, thoughts they'd like to share, you can inbox me, you can email me, you can whatever. Always get in touch with me, I'm always here. If you need help, if you need someone to listen, if you need someone to vent to, I'm always here as well. I understand the loneliness, I understand what comes with spirituality, so if anyone needs to talk to anybody, my inbox is always here. I've been there myself, so I fully understand all walks of life. I understand the rejection, I understand the aggression, I understand it all. It's one of the hardest things you can admit to yourself, and it's a true gut shot to the ego. And it's, just like in the Matrix, when Morpheus frees Neo from the Matrix, Neo refuses it. He rejects it. He says, no, I won't believe it. I can't. I won't believe it. And that's just it. Some of us think we're ready for the truth, but when it's presented, you reject it. And that's what I tell people. When you're looking for the alien in outer space or that external source to give you your confirmation as to who you are, if you're not ready to hear who you are, you'll reject it from them too. It won't matter what external source is trying to deliver the message to you. If you're not ready for yourself, you will reject it. You will reject yourself. And it doesn't matter in what form you are speaking to you. Because remember, there is nothing in the universe waiting to reveal itself to you. There is only you revealing yourself to you. In layers, in dimensions, in time. You peel back layers to yourself, and that's just it. There is no end. There is no final layer you peel back and you're there. You're never there. But that's just it. You're always there. That's the paradox. Okay. Thank you to everybody who joined me today. Thank you to everybody who watched me here. If you like this video, it will be up on my YouTube channel in about an hour or two. And that's Red Pill Rabbit Hole. Thank you. Have a good night.